I'm going to get started here. I got a couple things to go over. And if you guys remember, I almost forgot. I'm glad I was reminded. But I'm going to get out of here a little bit early today. I want to be down at the courthouse at 3 o'clock. So I'm not in trouble. I'm going to some friends of ours they actually adopted their daughter, gosh, it'd be 12 or 13 years ago, but they never officially did it in the United States. So they're making that official today at 3 o'clock. So I want to go down and visit that. So, or be there when that happens. Kayvon, what happens tomorrow night? That was not very enthusiastic. What happens tomorrow night, Kayvon? Against? Yeah. And women play at what time? Men play at about 8, yeah, depending on the first game and how long it goes and whatnot. So 6 o'clock tomorrow, wear your maroon and gold and go support your, although sometimes against Carroll they call it a whiteout or something, but I haven't heard anything, so it might just be normal. So wear your maroon and gold and go support your lights and skylights. It's great when there's a good student section over there. We always get great community support there, but it's always great because the students, they can get a little boisterous sometimes, which is kind of fun. So yeah, so go support them. We started with the starting point. Funny place. I got next on the list for things on the financials here is going to be the sales forecast. And so I want to go over that a little bit, spend a little time on that today. How are you folks coming on your startup? Because I'll probably make that due. And when I say due, it's kind of I'm not going to say it's soft. I want it to be a hard due date because I want you guys to get that in there so I can start reviewing those and give you some feedback if need be. So I'm thinking this week, Thursday, maybe even by Thursday, have you guys have your startup into me. That part doesn't really get graded separately, okay? Although I'll start giving you demerits big time if you don't get it in relatively soon. Again, I want to review them and give them feedback. And once again, I totally expect that there will be revisions to that as we go along. Okay, I wouldn't think there's any way at this point in time that you've identified all the things that you're going to need and what the actual costs are and those types of things. I get that. And so I would fully expect that you're going to come back and do some of those revisions. But at this point, at least, if you get everything kind of in there and you're balanced, we have a pretty good idea that you know what you're doing, and that's what's more important. Now, the thing about the revisions is you always have to make sure, let's say you discover that you forgot a $10,000 piece of equipment, and so you're going to add that $10,000 piece of equipment. Well, when you do that to your uses up here, money that you're going to spend, you got to add $10,000 down below it too, right, to keep things in balance. So you either have to add additional investment or additional loan of some sort in order to keep that in balance when we look at the startup. Okay. Question?
How many loans is about average per small business?
How many loans are average per small business? I would say it really varies. I know that's a cop-out answer, but it depends on the structure of the business. It really does, because somebody in here is doing a business, I think. Is that you, Seth, on maybe a service truck type of a thing? Yeah. Okay. He's probably going to have one loan for his service truck. Okay. Somebody that's got a little more complex business that's maybe a retail location, and maybe they're going to buy the real estate. They may end up with a real estate loan. They may end up with an equipment loan, and they may end up with a short-term loan for inventory and those types of things. Okay. On the other hand, we did a lot of retail types of businesses, small business lending, and we'd go to the SBA, and we could combine those into one thing. The SBA was good about that. And so best to ask me that question about your specific business maybe when you get to it. Okay. Some things are really identifiable. Again, if you're going to buy some real estate, oftentimes that is going to be segregated into a real estate loan, and then you might have a commercial loan besides that. Okay. that would probably, if you're gonna force me to say what's average, that's probably kind of the average. People that don't have real estate, they're not buying real estate, they're just gonna lease. They usually end up, to start off with maybe just one loan. They might end up with a line of credit, but that actually will show up on our cash flow when we do those. So, okay. So just briefly, what I was kind of talking about, we've got up here, fixed assets and operating capital or short-term assets that you may be purchasing. You're going to end up with a total required funds here of X dollars. That's going to need to balance with this total sources of funding. Okay. There is nothing complicated about that. You get to determine what the sources of funding are. Okay. So if your total needs up here, let's call these needs, are $150,000, then you need $150,000 in sources of funding, and maybe you're going to borrow 100 and you're going to use 50 of your own money. That's 150, you're balanced, it's all done, right? Okay, so please don't make this bottom part more complicated than it needs to be. Separating out the types of loans might be the one complication that you'd have. That was a good question that you had. And if you got specific questions about your enterprise, just hit me up and we'll figure that out. Okay. I will say, I'll go back, and this is a kind of an off-the-topic lesson, but I will say this from a banking standpoint. The type of loan needs to match up with the type of collateral. Okay, what do I mean by that? I mean by that real estate tends to not depreciate very rapidly, and so we did real estate loans for a long term, if requested. Okay, equipment, vehicles, those types of things, let's call those an intermediate term, right? They tend to depreciate. Okay, a vehicle, if you bought a vehicle today, how much is it going to be worth in 5 years? Maybe 20 or 25% of its original retail value, right? So it's going to depreciate, and so you'd set up a loan over no more than 5, 6, 7 years. Okay, equipment's the same thing. Inventory, accounts receivable, we tend to finance on a short-term basis because they're short-term assets. They're turning over constantly. Okay. So the next thing that I had on the deal is your sales forecast. This is one deficiency I kind of found on here, is that for some folks there's not enough product lines up here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is all that's listed. Okay, this is sales forecast year 1. For some of you that may be insufficient, and if it is, we'll probably have to do a little doctoring of the form, and that can get to be a little bit complicated. So if you're one of those, see me. Sometimes you could combine things. Let's say you had the coffee shop. Okay. Granted, you might have 14 different types of lattes and cappuccinos and frappuccinos and whatever else they are. Okay. But you could probably have an average. You could say, well, my average drink I'm going to sell for $3, and my average cost is going to be $2. Okay. We could probably do some of that to simplify this and make it work. Okay, but you're also probably going to sell some, retail goods, coffee mugs, T-shirts, whatever the case may be, right? And so you could end up getting a lot of product lines there, and so we might have to do some manipulation of this form in that case for those of you folks that might have different product lines.
Can you do like an insert column or insert row, or no? Will that mess up the formulas?
Yeah, that's what we'd end up having to do, and that can mess up the formulas. So then we'd have to go in and make sure that the formulas are still working, change up the formulas. Okay. And that's fine. I've had to do that before with 1 or 2 projects, and so we can figure that out if we have to. So what do we do here? The examples I just gave you were more or less retail types of things. If you were going to sell pizza, let's say pizza is another good example, because you got cheese pizza and you got supreme pizza, and they probably, if you started listing all the different types of pizzas as a product line, okay, you got small, medium, and large, and you got small cheese and large supreme, you'd have 47 different line items here, right? And it would be extremely complicated. So instead you might go product lines, pizzas, units, by the slice or whole pizzas, okay, because all you put in there, that's really not a numerical thing. Sales price per unit, again, in a case like that, like a pizza place, we're just going to maybe do an average, okay? Our small pizzas are going to be $12, our medium pizzas are going to be $15, and our large pizzas are going to be $18, so our average is going to be $15. Our cost per unit, we're going to have to do some calculating on that. There is actually a calculator included in this, okay, that we might do that. You'd add in your cost of cheese, your cost of meat, your cost of vegetables, your cost of your dough, et cetera, and figure out your cost of goods, okay? And then that's going to give you your margin. Margins, believe me, if you watch a lot of financial news, or you hear a lot of talk about margins. Margins are extremely important. When you get to bigger businesses, they love, Walmart sells $500 billion worth of stuff a year. If they can change their gross margin by 0.5%, it's a huge deal, right? Okay, smaller businesses, maybe not so much, but it's still a deal, okay? That's still dollars in your pocket, and so, you want to maximize your margins, but without sacrificing volume, okay? So you've got the 6 product lines. Then you'd come down here. I'm going to come back and I'll do service stuff in a little bit, because some of you guys are doing some service ones that you're not going to have product sales, so we'll talk about that a little differently. Units sold. Okay, so if we're doing the pizza place or the coffee place, I'm going to sell 100 pizzas per month. This is per month, right? And that's in January. Okay, in December, I'm probably going to sell 250 pizzas per month, because December's bigger and they got Christmas parties and we got those types of things going on. Okay, so there may be some seasonality, and there probably will be for a lot of businesses, a little bit of seasonality anyhow. Okay. If you're doing farm mechanics, April and May and June are probably going to be huge months. August, September are probably going to be huge months. Some of those other months maybe not so much, right? A little more steady. You run some specials to have people bring your stuff in January to get work done, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. So that's all you got to do once you get this filled in up here, and then you're estimating what your monthly sales of those units are going to be, not dollars. This is just going to be units. Cups of Machitos or espressos or whatever they are. I'm not a good coffee person. I'm sorry. I drink it black. That's all. I don't add no cream, no sugar, no nothing.
I honestly don't drink any coffee.
Yeah. You don't drink any coffee?
Not really, no.
Yeah, that's kind of insane on the other end. Man, you gotta drink coffee. Okay. It's going to fill in, all the white spaces are going to get filled in on their own. Again, don't start playing with the white spaces, right? Please do not make entries in the white spaces unless otherwise noted. Again, if we end up with more product lines than 6, then we might have to, because we might have to get in there and change some of those formulas and whatnot. It's the thing about it, it's really easy changing the formulas on here, but because these are connected to these other worksheets, that's where it really gets to be kind of complicated. You'll make some changes and yeah. So we'd almost be better to start up, and we might, start up another spreadsheet, kind of do it on there, and then just kind of import the numbers into here, and that might be easier actually. Okay, what if you're a service? Okay, we're doing mechanic work, right? You going to charge by the hour, Seth? Yep. So product lines, general repair. I'm making stuff up here. Units, just hours. Okay. Sales price per unit, what are you going to charge per hour? $75 an hour, whatever the case is, right? You're not going to have any cost per unit unless there's if you have an employee and you're paying them, okay, which if that's the case, there's 2 ways you can do that. If you're going to pay your employees basically a salary or a straight wage, that's going to show up over here on this payroll report. Okay, if you're truly paying them on a piece basis, piecework, then it could show up here on the cost of goods sold. Okay, so your employee, they're working for you, you're charging the customer $75 an hour, but your employee's going to make you they're making $35 an hour, period, and you're covering all the other costs and whatnot. Okay, then you could possibly show it on here. I tend to like it better on the payroll if we can do it that way. And the reason for that is because that includes your other costs, your workers' comp and those types of things that we're kind of leaving off here. This is almost like they were a contract laborer, and I'm not sure that you could get away with that type of a job. I don't think they could be an independent contractor. I think they'd have to be an employee. So we're getting into a little bit of legal and a little bit of complicated stuff. If we get to that on yours and we want to take a look at it, we'll do that on an individual basis. So, okay. Again, it's going to fill in all the orange stuff or all the white stuff for you. Okay, but you'll do the units, same thing. This is, pay attention to the numbers. Okay, and make sure that the numbers make sense. And what do I mean by that? Well, if Seth's doing an hourly thing, and so there's roughly 40 work hours in a week, that's roughly 160. You could probably say 170 because there's more than 4 weeks in a month, 170 hours in a month, say. And I get Seth's deal, and he turns it in, and he's the only person that's working it, and he's got 250 hours per month. I'm probably going to scratch my head and go, golly, is it possible? Yeah, and it might be. There might be some months, I might buy that if I see that in, like I say, in April, seeding season or something, okay, or harvest season. Yeah, okay. If I see 300 hours a month, then I'm going to start really scratching my head and saying, I'm not sure anybody could do that. Okay, same thing. Do the math. If you tell me you're going to sell 300 pizzas a month, let's see, there's 30 days in a month roughly. That's 10 pizzas a day. Okay, I can see 10 pizzas a day. I can probably see 20 pizzas a day. I don't know what a really good number is, but if I sit there and I start thinking 100 pizzas in a day in Havre, probably not. You're probably not going to average that, right? You may have some Saturdays that if you could balance that out over the whole course of the month, it might fit. But, on average, your Mondays, and you're probably going to take some days off, your Mondays just aren't going to do 100 pizzas. There's no way, right? Probably not on Saturday either, actually. So, okay. So think through your numbers a little bit on those projections, okay? Sometimes I like to almost back in those numbers, and that's if you know your operating costs and whatnot. You can kind of come in, you know what your gross margin is, you can kind of calculate what you need to break even. That's not a bad thing to shoot for, but we're doing it a little bit backwards here. But again, if believe me, a lot of you are going to get this done. You're going to have some sales projections, you're going to work on your operating expenses, do those types of things, and then I'm going to look at it and say, that's maybe not realistic. You may want to go back and adjust your sales numbers. Oh, you're losing $200,000 in the first year. That's probably not going to happen. We got to go back and adjust our expenses and/or our sales numbers. So, make good estimates at this point. But again, we can come back and do some changing. Now, if you come back over here, you'll see all these are kind of this yellow, gold, whatever you want to call it. On the years 2 and 3, and that's what this is, your forecast for years 2 and 3, what it's telling you is you can come in and change these unit numbers, and that's fine, okay? And you might do that depending on the business, but for most folks, just putting in an estimated growth rate is going to be sufficient, and that's just these two cells up here, okay? For most of you, that will be sufficient. If for some reason, you think there's going to be a big bump in the second year of a month and you want to go change that, or a few months and you want to change that, that's fine. You can change these if they're gold figures. I don't know that you need to change these ones. It'd probably be just these numbers up here, these units. Okay. But for 95% of you and maybe all of you, just manipulate this growth rate to what you think is realistic. Okay. Sometimes small business, brand new business, okay, growth rate might be pretty good. 10% might be too low. Okay. Sometimes if you're buying an established business and there's a trend for the last 5 years that the business is growing 5% a year, it might not be wise to estimate 20% a year next year. Okay, that might be a little aggressive. So weigh those, see what you think. That's really it. Except I said there is a calculator back here for that cost of goods sold. If you come all the way to the end, break even, financial, cost of goods sold calculator, right? Okay. Time frame for a month, product line, widget is what they're saying. Yours might be pizzas, might be whatever. This doesn't have a ton in here. Raw materials, okay, great. Labor used to produce the product, for none of us, there's nobody in here that shows a manufacturing type of a business. Okay, nobody that I'm aware of anyhow. I don't think it shows a manufacturing. So you wouldn't have this. Okay, you wouldn't have, this is only for manufacturing when you're actually doing a cost of goods sold there. Costs associated with shipping and storing raw materials, again, that's manufacturing. Production facilities, again, so most of these are set up for kind of a manufacturing type of a deal. Mostly retail, for example, if you're truly selling widgets, you're going to buy widgets from a wholesaler or from the manufacturer, and you're going to pay the manufacturer $5 and you're going to sell it for $10. So your cost of goods sold is $5 then, right? You may, and I don't know that this is a good way to do it, but for example, like I said with the pizzas, you may go through, if you want to break it down on a pizza, you got the crust, right? What's that going to cost roughly? What's the cheese going to cost? So how much cheese goes on a pizza? Well, it's a half a pound. Half a pound of cheese is X, boom. Okay, meats, same thing. You could kind of sauce, you could go through that, and you could develop a cost structure for a pizza. My guess is that when you buy a pizza uptown, the cost is probably 40% maybe of the sales price, just a guess. I had some folks do a craft beer or a brewery, and they calculated the actual cost of a pint of beer, 35 cents.
Including the glassware?
Well, the glassware, they're just going to wash it. You're not keeping the glass. Yeah, this is what they're selling at the bar, at the brewery, at the brewery itself, at the tasting room. Right. No, packaging would add to that. You're absolutely correct about that. But if you're buying a pint at the brewery itself, the estimated cost was 35 cents, and they're charging you $4 for it down there. So that's, yeah.
Don't they have like a $2 million loan, or not loan, but like insurance that they have to?
Well, maybe they probably have big liability, insurance that they have to carry. So, and maybe not so much the breweries like that, because you're limited to three beers at those places in Montana. 3 beers in 48 ounces in a 1 day period of time. So yeah.
They're considered a tasting room, not an actual bar.
Exactly. Yeah. But they love it, and I've talked to the guys that own the ones here, and they tell you exactly that. They love to sell it in place there, because once you start packaging it, you got that extra expense. And then you're going to sell it at a wholesale price versus a retail price. If you're selling it, a keg of beer, for example, when they sell a keg of beer, I think they can only get $100 and some bucks for that keg of beer. Well, you figured out the number of ounces and whatnot, and they're getting it's maybe a quarter of what they get when they're selling a beer at the tasting room. So yeah, they love to sell it. I could do the math, but not right now. So okay. So that's interesting for a lot of businesses. So, any questions about these? Okay. Again, I kind of would like to see those, and I'll put that in as a due date. I think start seeing those startups on Thursday. I'm happy to come around today for the next 20 minutes or so while I'm still here, and take a look at your startups. Take a look at whatever else you might have, and Thursday I'd kind of like those turned in. Again, it's a tentative thing. And you can turn it in as a tentative thing. That's fine. I just want to start looking at it for sure. Make sure that you guys are on the right track and take her from there. So, okay.